we're continuing to give you this rolling coverage today of the funeral of the former Deputy President of South Africa, David Mabuza. He's been given, of course, as protocol it informs, a Category 2 funeral, Level 1. This is what Deputy Presidents do get. And you're seeing all of the VIP guests that are arriving for the funeral that will be taking place. And this is at the Bergplam Primary School. That's where we have a studio that's set up, and we are going to be, of course, crossing over to them live as they take that broadcast forward. So we're really looking forward to you staying with us here on Morning Live as we continue to bring you this comprehensive coverage as Morning Live will end off at 9 o'clock, the weekend edition, and then SABC News taking that over. So we've been seeing really interesting things this morning, and we'll continue to bring it to you as one pays a thought to his colleagues and family at this difficult time that they are certainly are mourning a young life, in a way, lost, and we'll continue to bring all of this to you live. So I just want to quickly cross over to Sakina now, who's joined by Mum Sophie Mua, just to talk a little bit more about what we're seeing here this morning.
Indeed, Leanne, as we continue to monitor those visuals and trying to bring you as much of what is happening in this official funeral as we can from the different vantage points that we have as SABC News. Sophie Mua, our editor international news, is back with us. Sophie, as we watch Fikile Mbalula there, the Secretary General of the African National Congress, and some of the other senior members of the SABC, they, of course, are already at Hoërskool Bergplam. But the man that we are talking about today, the cat, as he was affectionately known, Didi Mabuza. And we are hearing so many things as people reflect on his legacy, Sophie. And of course, legacies are always complex. They are never linear. And at a time like this, I suppose it is to be expected.
Yes, you are correct. When one has passed on, we look at all sides of the story. And therefore, you'll always have the good and the bad. We know that there were lots of allegations leveled against him. And when he was the premier of the province, in terms of what was happening in that province, those allegations he denied. And the issue at hand is that he was never charged and he was never taken to any court of law to be able to face those allegations. And therefore, it becomes a bit complicated to really say this is what he did or this is what he didn't do, because these matters didn't see the light of the day in terms of the legal processes or the judicial processes, and therefore people will continue touching on these matters, and on the other hand, taking into consideration that he had denied those allegations and he was never taken to court or was never arrested or charged.
And we know there were so many, and some also intra-political. You know, you remember the so-called dossier that came out about him in his past. But we're going to park that there for a moment, Sophie, as we go to Natasha Phiri. And she, of course, is also at the venue at Hoërskool Bergplam. So let's cross now to Natasha to see who she has with her. Natasha?
Thank you so much, Sakina. I'm now joined by the MEC of Health, coming all the way from Gauteng, Usis Nomantu. And of course, you also share, common passion with the late former Deputy President Didi Mabuza. He was the chairperson of SANEC at some point, and of course, made a lot of strides throughout his tenure. What will you remember throughout then?
In fact, we remember the work that he has done, especially in working very closely with the civil society. Even 2 days ago, we're having a report that was presented on UNAIDS, and that report, part of that event that we had was to talk about him, the work that he has done, the motivation that he did to all the communities in the whole country about the issues of HIV and AIDS. And I think this campaign of 1.1 million people that we must look who are the defaulters will definitely do that on his behalf.
Are you not afraid, though, so in the current context, I was listening to a report by Griselda. She was in Ekurhuleni a day ago, so that, you know, the work that the South African government and working with the private sector and all stakeholders may be reversed because of the halting of PEPFAR funding.
We're all worried about that, but we have agreed that let's not stop the work that we have done. Let's not neglect the communities that we have been serving. We have to make sure that we look around for funds that will be able to assist and continue with the programs. And I'm sure in Gauteng you have heard that we have not closed any of those institutions that were helped by PEPFAR, because we believe that we should continue that good work that we have already done.
MEC, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much.
And all the best for today. Of course, that was MEC of Health in Gauteng, Nomanti Ralohoke, just also sharing, you know, the work that the late former Deputy President has actually, you know, done in combating HIV, AIDS, STIs, and TB in the country, as he was the chair of the South African National AIDS, you know, Council. We will continue to give you more rolling reaction from outside, and this is where most of the ministers and dignitaries will be coming in. Sakina?
Well, thank you so much, Natasha Phiri. And of course, from the outside, let's move you now to the inside of the Hoërskool Bergvlam. And of course, as we said, we've got eyes and ears everywhere to bring you the most comprehensive coverage. So let's take you inside to see what's happening. Many of the dignitaries already arriving. Right, Leanne Sophie, you know, again, a very somber occasion. Didi Mabuza and his legacy, the quiet fixer, as some have referred to him as. This is a man, very often we hear politicians are aloof or they are out of touch with what is going on the ground. Not something you can actually say about Didi Mabuza, because when all is said and done, that's not one of the things that he's been accused of.
Yes, he was very familiar with what needs to be done in terms of interacting with ordinary people. As a teacher, when you are a teacher, you learn the skills of interacting with learners. You become a parent. You extend your skills or your communication not only to the children, but even to their parents. And therefore, you work with people as a communicator. A teacher is nothing else but a communicator, an educator. And therefore, those skills comes handy also in terms of being able just to interact with people, because you interact with many learners at school and their parents from different backgrounds. So interpersonal skills, it's not a problem. And therefore, he was able to do that with ease. I mean, he was a strong person in terms of recruitment skills for the ANC. That is why now he had volunteered to be involved in recruitment drive, because it's something that he was used to. But also, you know, a person who could interact with anybody. I mean, we saw General Bantu Holomisa there, the leader of the UDM, even though he's the deputy minister currently. But they have interacted on many occasions. You saw Julius Malema there. You'd recall that his standing and very consistent call was that Julius Malema must return back to the ANC. Even during the election campaign last year, he made a similar call, even though Malema indicated that he can't start a party and then abandon the party, leave people who believe in that party with its policies. And that is why Malema is there, because much as Malema was in the opposition, he didn't tire to interact with him and to also call on him to go back to the ANC. So it speaks to a person who can engage with people even from the opposition bench.
To the Julius Malema point, during the ANC Youth League tenure of Julius Malema in 2012, when he was expelled from the ANC Youth League, Didi Mabuza was one of the people who were of the view that Malema should remain within the ANC.
Yes, he was part of the senior ANC leaders who felt strong that Malema shouldn't be expelled. you know, the late Winnie Madikizela Mandela felt the same. And many other leaders, you know, Advocate Dalimpofu at that time was just an ordinary member of the ANC. He felt the same. He even represented them. We know there were many other leaders of the ANC who went to testify in support or in pleading for leniency in terms of sentencing for Malema. So he was not the only one. Of course, there were people, very senior people, who felt that he shouldn't be expelled. And of course, he was amongst those who felt that he shouldn't be expelled. That's why, for him, it was easy to continue to call on Malema to return to the ANC, something that was not going to happen because he has already built a party and his view was always he can't abandon the ship. And of course, the issues that he differed with the ANC on were still there, are still there, and therefore, but that speaks to who he was. He still felt that he can continue to recruit those who left the ANC, those who haven't been in the ANC, and just, you know, recruitment was his thing. You would recall he started the campaigns with lots of the cars, you know, the vans, you know, that where you go to a province and you have these branded vans where you mobilize people. He was supported, of course, with big business in Mpumalanga. And therefore, he extended those facilities to other provinces when they were campaigning or other national engagement or event. And therefore, he was just a person who worked with people. And the reports that he had built schools, he had built houses, it's no surprise. This is who he was. Of course, a person has good side and you also have challenging moments and challenging sides. And therefore, in terms of what he did for the party, he was really committed to his party.
Well, we've got these split screens that we're seeing here on the screen at the moment, and of course we've got the arrivals, the VIP arrivals, and there's
Thabo Mbeki.
Our former president Thabo Mbeki arriving at the venue for the funeral that should be taking place and beginning at around about 9 o'clock this morning, and many others coming through as well. I know the Defence Minister Anjim Mutka is there. Natasha Phiri, I think, is going to have a conversation with her, but the moment that they're ready, we will cross over to them. So we'll just continue to monitor what we've got on the screens right now. That's the motorcade moving to this venue as we can see it live on the screen. That's what you have been seeing. Mum Sophie, I want to talk a little bit. Obviously, we're talking about the political career, and there's still the arrivals of. Do we know of the relationship between the former President Jacob Zuma and David Mabuza? Obviously, he acted as premier during his time.
No, remember that the relationship was quite sound, but it got sour, particularly because of the 2017 conference. Because President of the ANC then, who was the outgoing, was hoping that he will support Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, giving all the votes of the Mpumalanga province to that slate. But he didn't do that. But they had a good relationship because he supported him when he was put forward for being a president in Polokwane. And I remember the Mpumalanga province was amongst the 5 provinces that nominated the then Deputy President of the ANC, Jacob Zuma, to be a candidate for the ANC. Mbeki got 4 provinces. And therefore, there was that relationship. He was part of the Premier League.
Yes, of course.
The Premier League supported the president, then Jacob Zuma, to retain his position. And therefore, there were good relationship. But we are also told, you'd recall, the son of the former President Jacob Zuma, Duduzane, indicated that he had consulted his father, or his father played a role in ensuring that he goes to Russia for medical treatment, something that was spoken about by the former Secretary General of the ANC, who was expelled, Ace Mahashule. So there was a good relationship, but as I pointed out, you know, in politics, there's always fallout, you know. Very people do fall out, and That's what it is.
What's that now famous saying? No permanent friends and no permanent enemies.
Yes,
Absolutely.
yes.
But I want to talk. We haven't touched too much on. We've spoken about his political life. Panyaza Sophie there as well in the frame, and you'll just see many of the dignitaries there and paying their
the
last
speaker
respects.
there going to former President Thabo Mbeki, that was
Yeah.
Togo Didiza,
Yeah,
the
indeed.
Speaker of the National Assembly. You know that it's another arm of state, and with state funeral, you always, in most cases, have all arms of state
Yeah.
there.
I want to talk a little bit about the private life of Didi Mabuza, because obviously we've spoken a lot about his public life, and there's a lot out there documented. We know he wasn't well. We know that he disappeared many times during his deputy presidency.
That is Robert
Businessman.
Gumede,
The
the
visuals?
businessman in Mpumalanga who supported Mabuza a lot. When I'm talking about those bakkies,
Yeah, very
these
much
are
so.
the people who were always there. He would call on them to do certain work to help communities. Robert Gumede.
He's also going to be speaking in this funeral. He'll be doing the vote of thanks.
They were very close. They
Very
were
close,
very
yeah.
close.
So we will see that. Let's talk a bit about that private life. Those are the friendships. The fact that he wasn't well. I mean, it couldn't have been difficult for the former president and his deputy president and his family. Do
It
we know
was
much about
difficult.
that?
It was, because we are told towards his passing on, he had just returned from Russia or he was hoping to go to Russia again for medical treatment. So he battled that health
Poisoning,
challenge.
mostly, we imagine,
yeah.
was from that poisoning incident.
Right, we pause that there just for a moment as we take you back now to Natasha Phiri. And Natasha, of course, is just outside the venue. So let's see what's happening where Natasha is at. Natasha, over to you.
Thank you so much, Sakina. I'm actually joined by Minister Mutka, and of course, shortly after, I'll be joined by Minister Sinisiwe Chikunga. Ma'am, you've also come here to pay your last respects. Of course, you were in the education sector before becoming the Minister of Defense. Just kindly share those notes that you probably shared with the late former Deputy President.
No, I know Didi even as a student. When he was a training student, we were organizing teachers. So I know him from those days, even before he completed his teaching, when he started into the profession, and we were the founder members of SATU, amongst other things that we worked with him. And when he was a premier, I was a minister, and we did lots of things with him. It was very easy to work with the province through him, because we both understood the sector but had a very good relationship which came from far. Even when he was deputy minister, it was easy, deputy president, it was always easy for me to go to him to say, Didi, can I have the following? And we had this sister-younger brother relationship. So I'm really saddened by his passing.
Minister, we also can't ignore what's actually happening, on the sidelines of this funeral. Of course, we know that President Cyril Ramaphosa will actually address the nation tomorrow, in regards to the allegations that were made by the KZN Provincial Commissioner, Police Commissioner, Lieutenant General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi. We know that a number of political parties have opened, criminal cases. You've got, Parliament, those 3 committees in Parliament that have been tasked to investigate the matter. Perhaps just your insights on the issue.
I really appeal to people to wait for the president so that we don't jump around and muddy the spaces. People want to go to courts. It's expected. I would have been surprised if they didn't really jump to the opportunity. So let's not be opportunistic about it. Let's wait for the president.
Okay. Minister, thank you so much. If I'll just call in Minister Sinisiwe Chikunga. Thank you so much for joining us on SABC News, ma'am. You've also come to, pay your respects to the late former Deputy President. Perhaps if you'll just give us some of those insights, any personal experiences that you have shared with him.
Yes, indeed. It is a sad day for South Africa, but for some of us, I've known Didi Mabuza since 80s. They came from almost the same area with my husband, and therefore Makoti in Mpumalanga. And is one of the people that I was introduced to when I came with my husband to Mpumalanga, and I got to know him as a result. And a lot has been said about him. He was to us a family friend, if I were to put it that way, together with the candidates, etc. But just one thing that I want to add from what has been said about Didi, is his punctuality. If Didi is one thing that you take from him and learn from him, is him being on time on things. If you wanted to beat him in terms of time, you'd have to be 30 minutes earlier. Then you'll beat him, because definitely will be there 20, 15 minutes before the starting time of anything. And what I remember very well was when we had a mass funeral in Nkomazi and we were being briefed. And somebody was saying, no, but the families have not arrived, so you can take your time. And Didi Mabuza said, no, but we have got to wait for families and not families waiting for us. So it's one thing that I learned very much from Didi, that politicians don't have to be late. They can also be on time when invited to events or they are to attend meetings. And that is Didi Mabuza.
Minister, thank you so much for your time. Of course, Minister, Sinisio Chikunga as well as Anjim Mutka, just sharing those close personal experiences. But of course, Minister Mutka also just touching base on what is actually happening on the sidelines also of this funeral, the issue of Lieutenant General Nkandla Mkhwanazi, of course, on those allegations against Police Minister Senzo Mchunu. Ladies, it's back to you in studio.
Well, thanks, Natasha Phiri. Touching important issues. We can see on the screen as we just saw the Deputy President, Paul Mashatile, arriving, greeting everybody as he was arriving there. So you'll pick those up. We've also gotten wind now that the body has actually arrived at the venue. So I'm not sure if we've got visuals of that, but certainly our reporters are witnessing that, and we have got that confirmation. So the motorcade has now arrived, and we will start seeing things happening.
And just to touch on something that Anjim Mutka spoke there about the Minister of Defence, going back to Didi Mabuza as a young teacher who was one of the founding members of SATU, and I think he was in USA at the time, one of the teacher unions, because remember SATU was then composed of all those different unions, and they met in Harare in 1988 to form SATU, and that is one of the things that we don't really talk about in terms of, his progression within the ranks, how he was recruited to the UDF, for example, and all
from
of these.
The BCM.
From the BCM days. And, we don't necessarily, talk to all of those things, but he's been around and he's been there at all of those pivotal touch points.
Yes, we tend to look at the recent. We don't go back, particularly to pre-1994. He has been an activist even during his years as a student. I mean, as I pointed out, he was a member of the Black Conscious Movement. We know many were members of the Black Conscious Movement. After the unbanning of the ANC, it was very difficult to organize, to build structures. And therefore, as the body is now arriving, that's where he started. And in terms of politics, going to the formation of or the establishment of SATU, so he was involved. Many people knew or know him pre-1994.
So we just have to tell you that what you're seeing, obviously, are the remains of the former Deputy President, David Mabuza, now arriving for that funeral that should be beginning in around about 5 minutes from now. We have been following it from the homestead. That's the farm where the family reside, and they, of course, said their final goodbyes as he left for the last time and made his way to his burial. Well, not really the burial, but this is where the service is going to be taking place. The state, the SANDF, have been in control of this whole thing. And of course, this is what is a part of an official funeral, and it has been really interesting to watch this one. We know we'll get a report from our guys on the scene very, very shortly.
Yeah, because to be fair, as someone remarked earlier, this for us is still, uncharted waters. The official who was speaking to Nomfunda and Tulas earlier was actually saying something like the gun salute, you know, where they had to go back and, you know, look into that and deciding then on a 19 gun salute as opposed to the 21 that's reserved for the president. So, in fact, speaking of Thulas and Nomfundo, they, of course, in our satellite studio. So let's cross to them from their vantage point to tell us what's happening. Nomfundo and Thulas, over to you.
Thank you, Sakina and Leanne, in studio in Auckland Park. We are live from the Hoërskool Bergvlam, where the proceedings of the state funeral of the late former Deputy President David Mabuza is well and truly underway. Fundo, in terms of the program and keeping to the program that the state and the family have set for themselves, they're not doing too badly at all.
Yeah, most certainly not doing too badly when it comes to time. It's been split into 3 parts. The first part, of course, taking place in Barberton. We're now soon to start the second part of the funeral service, specifically with the welcoming note, which will come from Mandla Ndlovu, the chairperson and premier of the province. We're also going to have the chaplain. So a very short second part of the program, but most certainly it doesn't seem as though they're doing so badly when it comes to time.
Absolutely. So among what you are seeing there on screen is just the preparations just outside by the gates to this venue, the Hoërskool Bergvlam. And there are 2 marquees really that have been set up. There's one where the dignitaries and the mourners, the officials, people from the state and the likes will be seated. But there's an even larger marquee that has been set up that will accommodate many people that are expected to come through. Mfundo, I'm looking forward to the elements of the military that are going to be integrated into all of this, because earlier on when we were speaking to Admiral Prince Shabalala, some of what he was talking about was the adaptation they had to make for the cortege to move a bit quicker because of the distance between Barberton and Mbombela. But that means now they are transitioning and that gun carrier comes into play. And all of those elements. We are, of course, joined by Mzwandi Lembeche, our SABC politics editor. So I just weigh in on the conversation as we look at these visuals. Some of the people that have come through, and it's one of those signs of maturity of our democracy, isn't it? Because you see leaders from opposition parties, but also leaders from within the ANC itself, some of whom the late David Mabuza had difficulties from time to time in terms of the relationship and reconciliations at various points.
Absolutely. A very good morning to you, Mfundo and Thulas and the viewers. Indeed, I mean, we've seen some of the leaders, not necessarily from the ANC, from the DA. We've seen the leaders from the EFF, the leaders from the UDM. So that tells you that on an occasion like this, it's not so much about party politics, but it's also about humanity. At the end of the day, as political parties, you are not necessarily the sole enemies, so there are times where you have to put aside everything else and then do things that human beings do. This is a moment of sadness for the Mabuza family, for us as a country. Remember, this was our former Deputy President as a country. It doesn't matter whether you had voted for that party or not, but South Africans decided that this individual will be their leader. So on an occasion like this, so everyone comes together like we have seen it's happening.
On Thulas's point around reconciliation, he certainly did display that level of reconciliatory spirit, specifically in Mpumalanga, because ever so often when there were those fallouts, whether it be with Ronald Lamula, we heard even from Ronald Lamula himself that later on, whatever the differences, they came together reconciled. Whether it was the SACP, we've also heard from speakers from the SACP that there were great divisions in the province at one point, but most certainly extended that olive branch and wanted to engage. COSATU, same thing. When we speak of Bonakele Majuba, they were very critical of DD during his tenure here, but ever so often when the opportunity arose, he was one man that wanted everybody to sit at the table and reconcile.
You know, one thing about the former Deputy President, Mfundo, is that he knew his role. He knew when he was doing right and when he was doing wrong. In fact, the fact that he owned some of those things publicly about his own role. I mean, the people you've mentioned, I mean, you can even go as far as mentioning his mentor, Dr. Matthew Sposa,
Yes.
who had recruited him to be part of the ANC. And then, of course, they fell out. But besides that, go to Polokwane. David Mabuza has come onto the stage to say, I, together with a number of other comrades, were responsible for factions in the ANC. But we realized that as our faction continued to win, what of the ANC? So he is a man who would take a back seat and realize that, you know, what I'm doing perhaps is not right.
Yeah. So what you're seeing on your screens there is preparations for the casket to be carried out from the hearse. It is, of course, draped in the South African flag, as is traditional in terms of these state funerals and official funerals. As I was saying earlier on, a bit of an adaptation from how it would have ordinarily have played out with the gun carrier being central. But, you know, having said that, you are seeing the preparations to take out the
But we had great times in building the ANC together and in consolidating its unity. One of the things I'll be talking about in his eulogy is to remember him as a unifier. David Mabuza always wanted to see the ANC united and would go to great lengths to make sure that we unite all sides. The family is now waiting.
That is President Ramaphosa there. We took that opportunity to engage with him. I'm just going to hand it over as the remains, the coffin goes in.
Come to my side. Move back, guys. This way. Can we go?
Because, of course, now the program needs to get underway any moment now, as we can see the casket there and the pallbearers about to get in, as the Admiral Prince Shabalala had indicated that they would be lining the street. And soon enough now, the program is well underway. Mzwai.
Indeed, this is actually in fact, I think we were talking even off air about the nature of the funeral. So we actually have had, other than this, only one state funeral, like proper state funeral, that of former President Nelson Mandela. So of course, as the Deputy President, he is accorded a state funeral, obviously a level lower than the President, so which has a number of elements, as you have said. There was also a lot of adaptations in the process to ensure that everything is met. I mean, the distance where we are, and these things, I think when they were designed back then, so they had a mind of Pretoria, because that's where the capital city and the citadel of power is.
And among the key differences, Mzwai, is with the Category 2 state funeral. That's reserved for someone who is a current Deputy President, former Deputy President, and acting President of the Republic. So those are the categories. Also, there was no period in which the late former Deputy President David Mabuza's mortal remains laid in state at the Union Buildings by the amphitheater there. That didn't happen. So that's the other differentiator. But another critical one that Mfundo you spoke to with Admiral Shabalala earlier on has to do with the nature of the gun salute, the volleys that will be fired as part of the gun salute. 19 gun salute as opposed to 21 gun salute.
And listening to Prince Shabalala, the Admiral, he did indicate that even there, when it comes to those volleys, again, an adaptation, because this is essentially the first time we are witnessing what we are witnessing today. So even with them, it had to be a conversation as to, indeed, it is the president's prerogative. From 21, where do we go to? And they resolved that it would be 19 for the former deputy president.
Yes, because 21, Mfundo, it's full military honors that is reserved for a head of state. So if you're talking state funeral, obviously we know that will be head of state, former head of state, or the president-elect. If, let's say, you get elected, and then before you assume office, you unfortunately die, you'll still get all those full honors. But I think we were somehow robbed somehow to see how the state funeral category 2 happens when I think the family of FW declared refused.
Yes.
Remember, he was accorded state funeral category 2.